hereby call to order the Village of Riverside Planning and Zoning Commission regular meeting for Wednesday, April 24th, 2024. And could you please call the roll?
Commissioner Pelletier?
Here.
Commissioner Marhol?
Here.
Commissioner Miller?
Here.
Chairperson Hennigan?
Here. We have a quorum. Our first item is approval of the regular meeting minutes of February 28th, 2024. Is there a motion?
I move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Does anyone have any changes to the minutes?
Sorry, this is February 28th.
Yes.
Yes.
No changes.
All right, and please call the roll.
Commissioner Pelletier?
Aye.
Commissioner Marhol?
Aye.
Commissioner Miller? Aye. Chairperson Hennigan?
Aye. Motion's approved. Next up, the Planning and Zoning Commission regular meeting minutes of March 27th, 2024. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I second.
Any changes to the minutes?
In the, if I may, in the absent column, could you change one of the Commissioner Pelletier to Commissioner Marple?
All right. And please call the roll.
Sure. Commissioner Pelletier?
Aye.
Commissioner Marhol?
Aye.
Commissioner Miller?
Aye.
Chairperson Hennigan?
Aye. Motion is approved. Is there anyone present who would like to speak during this time about an item that is not on the agenda? All right. In that case, we can move on to our liaison report. Ann, do you have an update?
Yes, I have two updates. The feather flag ordinance was approved by a vote of 4-3 with the condition that signs are limited to being displayed to 30 calendar days per year. And so the first vote was to allow them for 90 days, but that failed on a vote of 3-4. So that'll move forward. That's effective now, and staff is working on materials to get out to the public to notify them that they have that option.
Can you remind me which districts does that apply to?
Both business districts.
Both B1 and B2?
That's correct. And the other update is that we'll have a public hearing for the landmark structure application for 169 Berry Point Road on May 9th, for those who'd like to attend. But that'll be headed to the village board after that. That's what I have.
Thank you very much. We have one item of new business this evening, PZ 24-0002, 2719 South Harlem Avenue, and 2720 to 2728 South Harlem Avenue, major amendment to approved site plans. Ann?
Thank you very much. Our applicant is Dr. Nurmati, and I'll refer to him as Dr. N. I believe he refers to himself that way, and I would ask him if he were with us today for permission, but I'll take that liberty. He's our applicant today, and there are two subject properties, the new parking lot at 2710 South Harlem and the adjacent shopping center at 2720 to 2728 South Harlem. So he is requesting a site plan amendment, one change for each of those properties, and I'll review these in detail in a second. But on the 2710 South Harlem Avenue, the parking lot, he's requesting to not install a 6-foot-tall wood fence along that back property line that's shared with the alley that is on the approved site plan. And on the shopping center site, he's requesting to not install a 9-foot landscape buffer between the sidewalk on Harlem Avenue and 4 adjacent parking spaces. And just to circle back, the reason that he is requesting to not have the fence is that having the fence will create traffic flow problems. And the reason that he's requesting not to have the landscape buffer or to reduce the buffer is due to a discrepancy in the measurement of the site plan, which I'll go into detail. So the commission has looked at these sites before and should, hopefully everyone's familiar with them, but just to point out, here is the location of the shopping center on Harlem and Long Common. The parking lot's here. And this shows the old building footprint for 2710 South Harlem, that's now a parking lot. I'll switch to the aerial photo. And you can see the shopping center outline here with the parking, and there's currently a parking lot here. And just to orient you, this is the Starbuds dispensary right here with the parking. And there is not a connection between these two, as a reminder. There's currently a fence that runs along the back of the Starbuds site. There is no fence behind the building, which is fairly close to the property line. And there is no fence here, but that is shown on the approved site plan. So I'll pull that up. Just to orient you, this is Harlem Avenue and Long Common. Here is the shopping center, the shining smiles in it. And here is the dispensary, and here is the new parking lot. So the two areas that we're looking at tonight are this area where the fence is shown, right here, in the parking lot, and this landscape median, which is located here. Okay, regarding the fence, that parking lot was built last fall. The site is partially complete. One remaining issue is that that fence is not installed. And again, Dr. N is requesting to not install that fence there because he believes it will cause traffic flow problems. As a reminder, the fence is not required by the zoning code. And that was determined during the last site plan review, along with a request for a special use and the variations related to the site plan. The fence was added to the site plan due to concerns about traffic leaving the property via the alley and that being a nuisance to the neighbors. Both neighbors across the alley have fences along the back of their property. And both neighbors were notified of this application, and one of the neighbors is here to speak tonight as a note. Since the village has been working with neighbors or residents in the Berkeley and Bird Road area about traffic in that area, the village reached out to them to notify them of this application, and we received 2 response letters which were sent to you in the packet as an amendment to the packet, and that was also provided online. The neighbors who provided emails had complaints that many of which were related to the dispensary, and as just a side note, I know that Public Safety Director Buckley has addressed those, some of which he hadn't heard specific complaints about, but that the village is following up on all of those complaints. But they were both opposed to having the fence not installed. They would like the fence to be there. Okay. Another note is that the alley behind that site is slated to be redeveloped this summer. It's going to be upgraded with pervious pavers. I'm sorry. Okay. Aside from potentially adding traffic signage, such as a no left turn sign at the end of the alley where it meets Berkeley Road, no other physical alterations are proposed to the alley related to traffic control. Okay. And I would just, the image that I'll present is part of the next application, but if you all had any questions about the fence, I'd be happy to answer that now, or if you wanted to take public comment. I'm not sure how you want to handle the 2 requests.
I think we can wait until the end.
Oh, okay, sure. Okay. The second request is regarding this median, and this is more of a math issue than anything else. So this site plan does not include an awning, overhang, structural element of the building that was added, I believe, after Dr. N purchased the building. So I'll bring up this photo that Commissioner Marhol was kind enough to provide that shows that this was the previous extent of the building, and this area was added, which is approximately 5.7 feet, over a walkway, and that is not shown on the underlying site plan that was used to draw up this plan. So adding that 5.7 feet, the discrepancy that we had discussed last fall about the measurement of the depth of this property, which was overestimated by a foot, the half a foot of the Harlem Avenue right-of-way that's shown that's part of the median, which is not actually on the property, and the existing median, which is about 2.3 feet, I believe, that adds up to 9.5 feet, which was the original proposed size of this median. Physically, it can't be installed as shown without changing either the parking or the drive aisle if the median's kept at 9.5 feet. So in Dr. N's request, I believe there was a slight miscalculation in what he had requested, but the remaining space for the landscape buffer is 2.3 feet, which is what's there now, currently covered in asphalt, but that could be obviously planted. So this is correcting more of a mathematical error than maybe a radical change to the site. Just a note, the current length of the parking spaces is 18 feet. the current width of the drive aisle is 24 feet, both of which conform to the zoning ordinance, so those portions of the parking lot conform to the ordinance. Were we to reduce those, a variation would be required. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Do we know when the overhang was installed, time-wise? I.e.,
I could,
before or after this plan was developed?
after this plan was developed, I believe the plan was developed using an old survey. I believe that was the issue.
I don't understand how that could possibly have occurred. I'm sure you've looked at the certifications. There's a stamp on there. I assume that's from an engineer, someone who certified that it was accurate. Dr. N presumably presented to us that all the information in his application was accurate. So how could that mistake have been occurred? Has anyone explained that? Staff, presumably someone went out and inspected the site before the application was made?
This was prior to my time, so I can't explain on staff's end what happened. I believe, I conjecture that the folks who drew this up were given inaccurate information, and this is the result, and that it wasn't caught until we actually went to start to do work and someone realized the math did not add up. That's my assumption.
Okay, it's just astonishing that we went through all of those procedures when you weren't here, and the board did, and Dr. N did, and all the rest, and never realized that there was a mistake. So where those parking lot spaces are drawn abutting the building, facing the building, those actually should be pushed back because the building as shown there is the structure of the building, and the walkway protrudes 5 feet over those parking spaces.
Correct.
That's basically the,
Approximately here. Yep.
and we're sure that that walkway and the covered portion, which looks fairly substantial, is protruding from the building. We're fairly sure that that was constructed since 2022, January 2022.
The walkway was constructed well before January 2022. That was an improvement.
When did he buy the property then?
Let's see, it's in the staff report.
It was years, so it was years before that, and he built the walkway.
That's correct.
I just want to confirm that those facts are accurate.
The property was
now.
purchased in 2016.
Okay. Okay.
And I believe Dr. N has joined us in case he wants to speak to the commission.
Hi, good evening. Sorry for being late.
Excuse me, do you mind being sworn in?
Yeah, sure.
Could you raise your right hand? Do you swear the testimony you're about to give is true and to the best of your knowledge?
I do.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, I think you've already jumped in, right?
I've covered everything. The one thing I wanted to note is I just briefly described your request for not having the fence, that it will create traffic flow problems. I didn't go into any further detail if you want to cover that. And I noted just a slight discrepancy in your request regarding the median. We added up the math, and effectively the area that's remaining, once you add up the building walkway, the parking drive out as it is, and the parking spaces, is about 2.3 feet. That's the remaining area, if we wanted to have a landscape median without changing dimension. I think you'd mentioned 3.2 feet in your...
2.3.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I just wanted to specify that, but...
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, so just to touch on the reasoning behind the changes. So first off, two separate items. One is the fence, the other is the landscape area. In terms of the fence, really it's mainly for traffic flow and safety within that parking lot addition, because it makes it very difficult for those cars, especially at the end, to turn around, back out, and go back out so that they can exit through Harlem. The fence hasn't been there this entire time that all the businesses have been operating, and there hasn't been any significant massive increase of traffic flow into that alley. I know there were some letters and petitions from some of the neighbors, but none of them were in regards to traffic or an excess amount of cars going through that alley. I think they were all mainly in regards to behavior of some of the patrons of the cannabis dispensary. So, yeah, the fence would mainly be to preserve the traffic flow within the parking lot. And then the second item, the request was, given the fact that there isn't enough space once we take into account the sidewalk that wasn't accounted for, and we're reducing that landscape area to what is now 2 feet, 3 inches. The request would be that we remove that requirement entirely, because we're talking about, that much green space. Also, because we are now in the process of creating a area where the bike racks are shown, where we're partnering with the village. Last month, we actually got approval to go through some of the design work to see how we can create a joint space for the village to represent some village signage, maybe put some village decorated bike racks in there. So given that we are going to enhance that area and that part of the parking lot, then it's almost like, okay, well, do we really need 2 feet, 3 inches of grass along Harlem Avenue? My request is if we can remove that, we can almost push everything out. It'll increase the drive aisle and allow for easier access in and out of the parking lot.
Chairperson Hennigan, if I could just note, this was discussed when we discussed the, not this request, but the issue of traffic going down Berkeley and Bird Roads to reach Long Common was discussed when we discussed the issue about changing the hours for the cannabis dispensary. Mm-hmm. And just to reiterate, and this is included in the staff report, but just to reiterate, the village has been working with those neighbors for some time. They generally seem satisfied with the reduction in traffic through that area. The village will continue to monitor the situation, but at this point, it does seem that there is some reduction of traffic in that area as a general thought, not speaking specifically to this application.
Thank you.
Do we have any numbers, any evidence about how many people right now, when the fence is not there, are exiting the parking lot and taking a left and going down the LA in order to get to Long Common, and then take a left onto Harlem from Long Common?
There's been no formal studies done.
Do you have any sense of that? Besides employees who are, the spots are all marked for employees there, but I'm assuming other people who are using that parking lot may also do that maneuver.
Right, just based on experience. So that parking lot right now is strictly for the patrons of that, the 2720 strip, not for the cannabis dispensary.
Right, I understand that.
So yeah, I don't, again, just anecdotally, I don't see a significant increase. There are definitely people who do come out of that parking lot into the alley and circle around in either direction.
So have you witnessed traffic in the alley going both ways?
I have not. It's very rare to have traffic going in both directions.
I mean, I don't mean at the same time, but like if you came onto the alley, do cars sometimes turn right and go down towards Berkeley, and sometimes turn left and go down Long Common?
I think for the most part, everybody turns right and goes down Berkeley.
So I'm just trying to get to maybe, Planner Siren, you have some information too, but let's say someone is in the parking lot and they want to turn left and go north on Harlem. What would be the typical maneuver people would do? Would they turn left onto Harlem, or would they turn left down the alley, go to Long Common, turn left onto Long Common, and then go to the left turn lane?
I did get a little turned around. Let me describe how I have used the alley and what I have observed. I don't believe that there have been traffic counts of folks that we can tie to leaving the alley, turning left to go down Berkeley, Bird to Long Common. I don't know that we have exact traffic counts that I can refer to. In researching an area, there was a concern about light in the area, so I spent some time in the area and driving down Long Common, just kind of observing. I've noticed more vehicles that appear to be headed north towards Berkeley than I have coming out. I have seen traffic go both ways, and I personally have used the access from that parking lot to go onto the alley and gone that way. Presumably, and the intention of the traffic control is for folks who are using the alley, however they access the alley, to use it and then turn, if they want to get to Long Common, to take 2 rights, to take a right onto Berkeley, a right onto Harlem, I guess 3 rights, and then a right on Long Common. That's why we have the traffic control signs there. Theoretically, if someone wanted to get there, they, of course, could turn left into the alley from this parking lot, take a right or left onto Long Common. I hope that answers your question.
Kind of. I just, when I was looking at it, if I wanted to turn left onto Harlem from that lot, it's from the parking lot of 2710. It seems to me it's somewhat difficult to turn left coming out of the parking lot directly onto Harlem. And I know if you go down to Berkeley, because I did it today, if you want to turn left, you're crossing, I don't know what the traffic laws are, but you're crossing some kind of a slightly raised median with 2 yellow lines. So it seems to me the safest thing to do is, if we're not using the alley, is for someone to turn right onto Harlem and then somehow turn themselves around to go left.
Sure.
Going, doing some kind of a maneuver on side streets.
I believe so.
Yeah, that is correct. The only way to safely, if you wanted to go, northbound on Harlem, you would have to get on Long Common and then turn left. Now, at the current moment, the parking spots there are not present, so a lot of times people will go through, but those are going to be closed off. So
Yeah.
once that happens, then you're right. It would also create sort of a bottleneck. Let's say someone's trying to turn left onto Harlem out of the parking lot, then it could potentially cause some traffic issues there.
I've seen people make a maneuver where they drive and kind of turn this
Right.
way to take a left onto Harlem. So going through the traffic, kind of angling the car and then coming back that way.
Right, so if we block that section and people aren't able to do that anymore, then really coming out of the alley and going into Long Common and waiting at the light there is probably the safest way to get on Harlem to go northbound.
And my other question, maybe more for you, or staff or police chief or whoever, is when the alley is redeveloped, is there any intention to make it a one-way direction travel?
To my understanding, that is not the intention.
It's not really wide enough for 2 cars, is it? Or will it be after the,
I believe you'd have to make some choices in the alley. If you saw someone coming towards you, someone would have to turn off to one area or another or back out.
right?
Which is pretty typical for alleys. This is-
Except the problem is, if you turn left where there's no fence right now, your view is blocked by the building, and then you have that dogleg turn. So I can imagine, I don't know if this ever happened, someone's turning left, going towards Long Common, and someone's coming from Long Common at the same time.
Sure.
And they collide or come close to colliding.
I would agree with that that's a risk. I would put that on the drivers, because the drivers know that it's an alley, and more than 5 miles an hour in an alley is wildly inappropriate.
Is there a speed limit? That's a good point. I don't believe there is a speed limit sign.
I do not think that there is a speed limit sign
I
in the alley.
doubt there is, but that's what driver's ed is for.
Right, well,
And
some
I'm
of us
not,
haven't had
I'm
that for-
not, I'm
I
not
just would
trying to
recommend,
be
I assume that when the
sarcastic.
village
It's just-
redevelops the alley, there'll be some consideration, I hope, of some of these safety issues as far as marking
What,
direction of travel or speed or caution or all
Oh,
those
yeah.
things, because right now it's in pretty bad shape.
Caution would be appropriate.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any-
yeah, I just want to point that not having a fence would probably make it easier to pull to the side if another car was coming through in that section.
Can you repeat that?
Not having a fence there would make it easier for someone to pull over to that side and allow another car to pass.
Doctor, for the area directly behind the building, the 2720,
Yep.
the width between the right-of-way line and the building itself, is that just open, or you guys?
Yeah, that's where the dumpsters are kept.
Oh, sorry, that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
There's stuff there.
There's stuff there, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you can kind of see it.
Which then gets to Commissioner Miller's point that there's a little bit of a sight distance problem there. You did not create that, just there is. And this may be directed at Ann or Doctor or Commissioner Miller because I don't remember when I just drove through there. As you go north on the alley and you hit Berkeley Road, I do not remember seeing any kind of signs that tell one not to take a left turn from the alley.
I do not
bel-
believe there is signage there. I think that's
do not
correct.
think so.
The signs are on the other side of the alley.
Right, the signs are on the east side of the alley, which is what I thought I remembered, but I'm doubting myself right now.
They are.
The do not enter signs are approximately here. That's
They are
correct.
I know the do not enter signs are directly east of the alley.
Mm.
What I was getting at, there's no turn sign.
Additional signage. And I think that was an opportunity that was identified when this alley is redeveloped. One of the traffic control that could be added is a no left turn sign.
Because I know that I actually did make that left turn. The residents I'm sure don't appreciate it.
And the plan shows wheel stops in each of the parking spaces. Are those required by our ordinance?
They are. In lieu of a raised curve, you can have wheel stops.
Thank you. Any other questions for Ann or the petitioner?
Well, Ann, I have a question regarding what the doctor said about, I guess, creating the green space where the bike racks are. Do you have any information about that, or what the relative size of the spaces?
I'm sorry, what about the size of the spaces?
Where the bike racks are, creating some kind of little, I don't know, if it
An
would be a
entryway
green space,
feature?
or if it would be a hardscape, or if it would be,
So that's under
Pervious.
consideration. That would be a partnership between the village and Dr. N in improving that and kind of making a gateway feature in that area. So that's still being discussed and designed. But the consideration was to, yes, create a space here that may have a joint signage, or excuse me, I know the bike racks are there, and I apologize. I looked at the site plan where the signage is located. I don't want to misspeak. Dr. N, can you help me? Where was the signage be located?
Yeah, so I think the firm that we've retained to come up with a design is going to look at potentially putting signage there or potentially putting signage in the further north, right there, yep, where the new sign will be located. So
Yep.
we're looking at both options. But definitely, whether the sign goes in either area, we're still looking at potentially creating, putting in some village bike racks, some hardscape, some planters, things like that to basically enhance that corner as a gateway into Riverside.
and your current proposal, because I don't remember reading this in the memo, is to totally eliminate that median with the red cloud around it. And then where
Yes.
the bike racks are, developing that area possibly with something pervious, possibly with hardscape.
That area won't be developed under any plan. So it would either just be the green space that's shown, actually the 2-foot 3-inch green space, or there won't ever be like any bike racks or signage or anything.
Right, I meant in the little corner area. Because right now, again, I didn't see it in the memo, but now it sounds like you're proposing eliminating that median totally because instead of having it being 2 feet wide.
Right, just eliminate, yep.
And then where the bike racks are, there might be some kind of pervious
Yes.
hardscape or something like that.
Right, so right now the discussion would be enhancing where the bike rack section is with hardscape, planters, village bike racks, or possibly a village sign. Or if that area doesn't work, then the area that shows signage, also doing some type of joint signage there, or landscaping, or flowers, or planters, or things like that.
Okay, thank you.
Does this site currently meet parking requirements?
In terms of use, or in terms of dimension? In term-
Use.
Use? Yes, I believe it does.
Does it exceed?
I do not think it does. That's a great question. I apologize, I did not check that before the meeting. I can look into that if you want to hear comments from the public, and I'll do a quick calculation for you.
All right, any other questions for the petitioner? All right, you can have a seat.
Thanks.
Now, if there's anyone in the audience who would like to go to the podium to discuss anything?
Hi, I'm Dan Fulweiler. I'm the owner of 525 Berkeley Road.
Want to be sworn in?
Sure.
Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is true to the best of your knowledge?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. First, I want to thank the commissioners and thank the staff at Riverside for all the work that you guys do. I know it's a hard job. And I also want to say, he's a great neighbor. And I get my teeth done there too. It's convenient. So I have no objections to the change in the landscaping, the green space landscaping, but the fence is kind of a problem for a couple of reasons. First of all, and this has nothing to do with Dr. Nurmati, the folks who use the dispensary will use the gap in the fence to come into the alley and sit behind the buildings and smoke and take breaks. And that happens on a regular basis, like multiple times a week. And so the fence would obviously help with that. That's a nuisance. There's also, I think, as you guys probably know, a lot of public urination in the alley now since the dispensary is there. And I know that the village is working on that with the dispensary. I have the manager's name. I don't particularly think it's my job to call the manager, but they're trying to do their best is the upshot. But the fence would definitely help with that. The second is the traffic issue. So I use the alley every day because my garage is off the alley and my husband does as well. And so since the parking lot has been installed, there is more traffic in the alley, and the problem of people, everybody goes slow. Nobody's going over 5 miles an hour. But the problem of having to back up to let people get past you has increased dramatically since the parking lot has been installed. Then the other is just that, alleys really aren't supposed to be for through traffic. And I know a parking lot isn't exactly through traffic, but I would just prefer it if they turned right onto Harlem and went around the block, which would be the safest way to do it. And then the last sort of objection is one that's related to the village code, which is a very particular problem to my property, which is that my fence is falling down. I want to build a new fence. My fence is not currently compliant because it's 5 feet, and it faces out to Harlem. So I'd really like it to be 6 feet, but it actually has to be 4 feet because it's on my side yard. And so I was really counting on that fence being 6 feet across the way to help block the view and screen all the traffic from Harlem, especially since my new fence can only be 4 feet, which I think is kind of weird considering it's right across the alley from them. Anne has been very helpful on this, and the staff have told me that I could apply for a variance, but applying for a variance costs $1,000, and there's no guarantee that it will be approved. So given this circumstance, when I replace the fence, it will be coming down in height and be lower. Meanwhile, there won't be a fence across the alley, and I'll have to have all that traffic looking straight into my windows. So those are the various objections, and I think that's all. Any questions? Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Quick, this is more a perspective question. Where in relation to the site plan, Anne, can I ask you to bring that up? Does your, that'll work too.
Yeah, so this is my garage here, where my garage
Okay.
is, yeah. And then the fence will have to be 4 feet back to about
Got
here.
it, okay,
Yeah.
thank you. I was just trying to picture where the garage emptied out onto the alley.
And that's where people are smoking all the time. Literally, I open up my garage and there's somebody there smoking, which is pretty uncomfortable actually, because I don't want to have to confront them. I really don't want to have to confront, and they're nice people. They're just getting high, right? But it's just kind of a pain, and especially because the neighbors all have kids. We don't have kids, but in the summertime, it's a lot worse with the smoke sort of wafting through the neighborhood and stuff. So, and I know that's not your problem.
Thank you. Would you like to speak?
I would, yeah, thank you.
All right. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give is true to the best of your knowledge?
I do.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Tim Daly. I live at 521. I am here to ask you to oppose the variance to the site plan. I agree, there is a serious traffic flow problem, and I feel like encouraging the people in that big parking lot to use that alley exacerbates the problem. It doesn't help. You know, we have a major thoroughfare butting up to that parking lot called Harlem that we should be pushing the traffic towards, but to encourage this outflow of traffic, which is frequent and consistent, to go into this alley, maybe they go left, maybe they go right, it just seems foolish and unsafe. I do agree, though, there is a traffic flow problem, but this pushes the problem on to the safety of the kids in this circle and the homeowners and the people that live there. And I think there are better ways to fix the traffic flow problem than to do that. Oh, a couple other things. You have not had a lot of public complaints from our group of people because under Mr. Ballerine, he set up this norm where we all talked with him, and now the neighbors are complaining to my wife a lot. So my wife is complaining through me today, sorry. But if that helps with your decision-making process, we could encourage our neighbors to email you guys directly. And I heard a statement that the neighbors are generally satisfied in the reduction in traffic. That is not true. That's all I got.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
All right. With that, we'll open the floor for discussion. Ann, did you have an answer
Sure.
to the
I wanted-
parking question?
So I wanted to give an exact number. It's a little bit difficult because the size of the building is unknown to me at this particular moment. I would say based on the estimation and without having referred to the application materials that were submitted and reviewing those carefully, they are overparked, as I would say. They are beyond whatever is necessary for parking. I would suspect that they were allowed or encouraged to have that parking as shared parking, potentially with the dispensary and overflow parking, and with the assumption that regardless of what numbers are in the ordinance, there was a clear demand for additional parking in that area. Yes.
Would you say overparked by 1 spot or 2 spots or 5 spots or?
I wouldn't want to put a number on it.
Okay, more than one, or at least one.
I would say more than one.
Obviously one,
Yes.
not, okay.
Yes.
And that's for the 2720, or is that 2710 combined with 2720?
Sure. So if you consider this as a piece, because there's no connection directly to, you could park there and walk over certainly, but there's no vehicular connection between these two. If you consider these parcels as a piece, I would say they do exceed the minimum requirements in the ordinance. But whether the demand is there or not, that's remains to be seen.
I think to summarize, it might be better to say that we've encouraged purchase and development by the doctor of that area as additional parking to support all the businesses in the area to encourage, commercial use.
I say that's an excellent summary. Thank you.
I'm happy to kick things off if we like. Regarding the landscape median, I understand that, there's some bad information, and so things physically don't fit there, which is too bad, but that's what we have to deal with. Although 2.3 feet is not a lot of space, it still is some space, and I think that would be preferable to having parking spaces directly up against a public sidewalk. Having some sort of buffer there, whatever those planting materials may be, I think is better than just having nothing and having cars right up against the sidewalk. I think that could create a potentially dangerous situation there, so we should use whatever we have available, even if it is only the 2 feet. So I'm okay with going down to 2.3 feet, but I would not want to eliminate it entirely. With regard to the fence, I can see, how having that open would make for a better traffic flow for the commercial area. Obviously those spaces on the far west end of the site are going to be very tight and difficult to get in and out of. However, I would rather see the elimination of 1 or 2 of those spaces to provide some turnaround area rather than eliminating the fence, simply because at the time we approved this site plan, there was going to be solid fencing all the way down there, and the function of the alley was essentially to provide access to the garages off the alley, with the exception of the dumpsters, where you'd have garbage trucks going to and from them. But it was essentially, for access to the residential houses. By eliminating the fence, we're creating a commercial thoroughfare where there wasn't one at the time that we approved this. And I think that's a pretty major change for the neighbors, and something that, they didn't really get to have a say in. So I personally would be in favor of keeping the fence for those reasons.
Oh, I think you stated it all very well. That very much reflects my thoughts. As far as the median goes, I think it's a good point that there should be, whether it's green space or whether it's hardscape, there shouldn't be parking potentially right up against the sidewalk. So I'd be fine. It's a small area if it wasn't soil, if it wasn't green, there should be some buffer there. And as far as the fence goes, I feel fairly strongly that we approved the site plan, and the special use was approved based on the understanding, the condition, the representation that a fence would be installed there. And I don't see any justification based on a sense of traffic flow and difficulty turning around there that fence should be eliminated from the plans, particularly given the information we've received from people who live in the area about the urination problem, about the potential, possibly increasing potential for that to be used as some kind of a thoroughfare, and the fact that, again, we depended upon that. And yes, if there is an issue with turning around from a spot that's right on the edge by the fence, I agree that the doctor or future property owner could choose to eliminate a space, for instance, one of the ones that parallel the side of the building. So I think that's all I have to say.
That's pretty good.
I agree with everything that's been said, although I would like to offer that since the site plan that was presented to us was, there was an omission of the overhang that was like some 5 feet. I wonder if rather than having to compromise all green space to make up for that issue, if perhaps we couldn't reduce the number of spaces instead of 4 along that green space, do 2 parallel spaces, and then perhaps we could have a little bit more green space. And as you've said, the site is likely overparked. So instead of those 4 perpendicular spaces, perpendicular to to Harlem, sorry, that it would be 2 parallel spaces. So I'd like to make that suggested change. And as far as the fence along the alley, circulation and parking for a commercial lot should really be contained on the lot. I don't think alleys should be used for circulation for the patrons. So I would not support eliminating the fence. And perhaps, employees or someone who's more familiar with the parking lot and is not moving their car as frequently as the patrons are could use that space. It could be even reserved for employees. That might, help to alleviate the circulation problem there.
I would say currently those spots are marked with signs reserved for employees.
And do you happen to know the allowable length of a parallel parking space? Is 18 feet sufficient for that, or do we require something longer?
I can't. Let's see. I was just measuring that. So we've got 36 feet to work with there. Let's see. I think we require parallel to be 20.
The fact that it's not continuous parallel, like I can see the need for 20 if it's a continuous parallel parking, but it's open on both sides. So.
Well, and to your
Little
point, it's
drawing.
always open on one end.
Correct. That's what,
So
yeah.
there's not, by placing a parallel space in that location, even if it's at 20 feet, it does not restrict the use in any way as a parallel parking space, i.e., you don't have the challenge of actually trying to parallel park. You can pull directly into it. If
When you
that
speak
makes
of parallel
sense.
parking, are you saying they'd be stacked like facing
Oops.
north?
Yes.
So there'd be two next to each other facing north?
No.
With the median to the east? Is that,
Yeah.
They just
median
basically
to the east
turned-
of both, yes.
turn 90 degrees?
So basically, to try and do a picture with words, in the area that is currently clouded, you would take those 4 spaces, turn them 90 degrees, and leave 2.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, that's what I was assuming you were talking
So
about, yes.
turn the spaces 90 degrees, and you would have 2 that are approximately, Anne, could you tell us on that drawing, I can't read it on mine, how wide the spaces are?
So these are 9.
So you would end up with 2 18-foot-long spaces.
And then would those not require any kind of stop or?
I don't think, if you look at the other spaces next to the building, on the north side of the building, those are not shown with stops.
Those don't have wheel stops, so you can maneuver in and out, and you can back in and out.
So,
Okay.
This is not, I need to make this explicitly clear, this is not directed at Dr. N, but this plan that the architect developed is pretty much, it feels a little bit bait and switchy. There is no justification for the architect to have missed the walkway in front of the building and put the parking spaces there. And as we discussed a year ago, that fence was definitely an item that was determined to be a necessary element of the plan. And so that being said, and with the commentary from the residents, I really do not support the removal of the fence. Having just driven there, it's very easy to just see that alley as a convenient place to go. I just did, I turned down it, took a left, a right, went to the north, got to Berkeley. There was no signs, and even if there was, it's very easy to take, right, and then to take a left going west on Berkeley. It's very easy to do that because that would be, to get back to Harlem at Long Common using the stoplight. I can see, Commissioner Miller made a number of comments about what do people do? And the reality is, most people are just gonna do whatever is convenient regardless of signage. And so I think the fence is a necessary element to keep the commercial traffic to the Harlem side where it belongs and not on the alley. The two parallel parking spaces at the median, sorry, what are we calling this?
Calling it an island?
The island, thank you. Lose my mind here. They're a good idea. I could have easily gone with what Commissioner Miller and Chairperson Hennigan said, and as long as there's something there along those spaces, between the spaces and the sidewalk, I'd be good with that.
There were two other things that occurred to me, just to explain to the village board where I'm, part of my reasoning also. One thing I forgot to mention before was the reason why another reason I think the fence should be put up is that it could be stated that, oh, well, we're doing traffic counts, the police go by there all the time, all the rest. But the nature of individuals using this alley for inappropriate purposes is going to be non-monitorable without some kind of video camera. It's the nature of things and individuals that it's going to be happening all the time. It's not going to be able to be stopped, and it's just a burden on the neighbors. And then the other thing is that one of the comments we received is from, I think it's 525 Berkeley. That house, when people were to come out of the alley going north, if it's evening, their headlights would basically be close to or looking right at the front of that house. So I could see that if it starts becoming, in the winter months, a regular pathway for people leaving the parking lot, whether they're turning left or right, that could be a disruption to the people living in that house as well. You know, disregarding the idea of, you know, just people just driving through the neighborhood, but just the existence of those lights there, so. And again, the neighbors did not, when we initially approved this, we did not contemplate that burden being put on the neighbors. So, that's all.
All right, any additional discussion? All right, in that case, we can go through the standards for site plan review. I apologize, these are extra lengthy, so it'll take a bit, but
I have a
yes.
question of just, of process. Do we have two items in front of us that we'll go through, and is that how we would do it?
Oh.
Individual to
this is-
individual.
In other words, we're not voting on just the site plan, because we have differing, I guess, thoughts on elements of it.
No, that's a good point.
Do we need a motion?
Typically, we have the motion prior to reviewing the standards, so that may speak to,
That takes
standards.
care of that. In that case, do we have a motion?
So I would like to move that we approve the changes conditional to not removing the fence and requiring the two parallel spots to maximize the green space while accommodating the overhang.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Now, we'll go over the site plan standards. Thank you.
Do we want any discussion on that? I just want to, regarding the spaces, if we're all on the same page.
I think I am. And what you said at the beginning is in consideration or in, all this part of one package is, would not be removing the requirement to have a fence, which means we'd not be granting the request to eliminate the fence as a requirement of the initial site plan approval,
Right.
something like that.
So, can I rephrase it? So what I believe Commissioner Peltier has proposed is that we grant a revision to this site plan. And that revision basically says the parking spaces at the front of the building will be pushed out approximately 6 feet towards Harlem to accommodate the overhang of the building that was not in the original drawing. The fence would remain along the alley, and the 4 spaces at the island would be changed to 2 parallel spots, that being parallel to Harlem. And as much as possible, the revised plan would maximize the size of the island while still accommodating the internal flow of the parking lot, that being whatever it currently shows for driveway width,
24 feet.
the 24 feet, thank you. And also accommodating what the property owner and the village have determined is good for that little corner at Harlem and Long Common. Yes?
Perfect.
All right, thank you very much.
Do we have a second?
So,
Or
I'll,
do we need a second?
If-
Joe gave us a second, I believe?
if Commissioner Peltier
Okay.
is good with what
First.
I just described
Yeah.
as her proposal, then I'm perfectly happy to second it.
Thank you. All right. So, in addition to these specific standards for uses, parking, landscaping, building design, and signage included in the zoning ordinance and in Title IV, Chapter 3 of the Municipal Code, the Planning and Zoning Commission shall base its decision of approval, approval with conditions, or denial on the following additional criteria. The arrangement of the structures on the site to A, ensure compatibility with development on adjacent property. I believe that's our intention there. B, respond to existing off-site utilities and service conditions to minimize the demand for additional municipal services, utilities, and infrastructure. Not sure that this applies.
Does not apply.
C refers to the B2 district, which does not apply here. Number 2, the organization of circulation systems to A, minimize potentially dangerous traffic movements. Again, that's what we're trying to do here.
Right, yeah, that's what we're trying to achieve.
B, provide adequate and safe access to the site.
Yes.
Yes.
C, separate pedestrian and auto circulation wherever practical.
We're accommodating the walkway.
And D, minimize curb cuts.
We've got no changes to those.
Yes. 3, the design of off-street parking lots or garages to A, minimize adverse impacts on adjacent properties.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah.
B, promote logical, safe parking and interconnection with adjacent parking lots.
Yes.
C and D refer to the B2 district as well, so those do not apply. Number 4, the design of landscaping, screening, and related improvements to A, promote and maintain village standards for appearance and development quality.
Yes.
B, provide harmonious transitions to adjoining lots and developments.
Yes, to the extent possible.
C, create a desirable and functional environment for motorists, pedestrians, and occupants of residential dwellings, business owners, and employees.
Yes.
Yes, that's very much what we're trying to achieve.
D, screen incompatible uses.
Yes.
Yes.
E, minimize the visual impact of the development on adjacent sites and roadways.
Yes, we'll
Yes.
achieve that.
F, utilize approved plant materials. That goes on.
That's not
Really
being
apply.
that's not being
Yeah, we're not-
discussed here.
Yeah, I'm not going into that. Number 5, site illumination. We are not.
We are not
Looking
changing
at-
anything to what was previously proposed.
And 6, conformance of the proposed development to the requirements of the zoning ordinance and other applicable codes and ordinances.
Yes.
Yes, intention is to not have variations there. And 7, the relationship of the site plan to adopted village land use policies and plans.
Yes.
All right, in that case, Anne, could you please call the roll?
Sure. Commissioner Pelletier?
Aye.
Commissioner Marvel?
Aye.
Commissioner Miller?
Aye.
Chairperson Hennigan?
Aye. The motion passes. This recommendation will then go to the village board at a future meeting. We have no old business, any information anyone has to share? All right, our next meeting will be on May 22nd. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Give it to Jacqueline.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.